Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Big East Rewind. I am your host, Chuck Everson from Villanova, and my co-host, as always, my main man, the point guard, Sonny Spera from Syracuse University. How are you today, son?
Chuck, doing great, doing great. We got a couple of Johnnies in the house. Looking forward to this.
We got the Johnnies in the house, the Redmen. I can't bring myself to say Red Storm, Sonny.
No, I couldn't
not
either.
In my vocabulary, you know. My daughter goes there now, and she's talking about Johnny Storm. I'm like, who the heck is that? You know,
just like we're the Orangemen, not the Orange. I mean,
that's right. That's 100% right. So let's introduce our guests today. We have two guys that have come from very similar backgrounds, both from basketball families. You know, Matt's brother played at North Carolina, Chris. And Billy's uncle played with me at Villanova and went on to the NBA and played on several teams over 12 or 13 years in the NBA. We've had him on. And Matt's the guy from Long Island, New York, my homeboy. You know, he's one of our guys. He was a very, very tough, hard-nosed competitor. He was the guy, Sonny, that brought his lunchbox to games every day. And the guy was, if he didn't get 2 or 3 floor burns a game, it wasn't a good game for Matt. So please welcome Matt Brust to the show. How are you, Matt?
I am doing great, and thank you for that stellar introduction.
Absolutely, brother. It's been a while, you know.
It's great to see you. Yeah, it's great to see you and old Long Island friends.
Yep. And joining Matt today is my main man from St. John's. He's Mr. St. John's to me. I mean, every time we talk about St. John's, we talk about Billy. You know, it was all city player in New York City when he was growing up at Adlai Stevenson in the Bronx. Played for Steve Post, if I'm not mistaken, at Adlai Stevenson. He was Sonny. He was like a Wes Unseld type player. He got both of these guys, but they got the best out of what God gave them. You know, he got the most out of what his natural God-given abilities, you know. And my main man, Billy Singleton. How are you, Billy?
I'm doing great, Chuck. Thank you for that that lofty introduction. I kind of didn't know who you was talking about, but I'll take it.
You know what, Bill? That makes 2 of us, because sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. You just keep going, though. That's how we roll around here. You know, you'll find out in short order that neither of us really know what we're doing, but we're having fun. Right, Sonny?
That's 1,000% true.
That's probably right. Exactly what it is, you know?
No, listen, your broadcasts have been amazing. You guys had some great guests on, and the interviews are very introspective of the time that we were in, you know, the 80s, early 90s, and you get some fabulous stories and some great insight on players and programs and things of that nature. So it's been great. I always watch the broadcast.
Yeah, well, we thank you for that, Bill. I mean, it's been a labor of love for Sonny and I, and you know, you guys having played in the Big East as well. You guys know exactly what we're talking about. It was so much fun to play at that time, you know, and an experience being part of something bigger than yourselves, being no matter what color jersey you wore, you know, and the camaraderie that's there. Even for guys that wore different colored jerseys, you know, here we are with a couple of red men and orange men and a Wildcat sitting in a room cutting it up and just having some fun. So, you know, that doesn't, you know, it was like when Sonny and I actually went to dinner with Reggie Williams a couple of weeks ago, you know, and it was like, hey, a Hoya, an orange man, and a Wildcat walk into a restaurant. What happens? You know, it was one of those type of things. So it was a lot of fun. So
no punches were thrown.
No punches were thrown. Reggie and I were good, and the Orangemen and the Hoyas didn't get into it. So it was really a good night, actually. So worked out pretty well. So talk, you know, Matt, you first. Talk about growing up on Long Island. And how you came to be at St. John's by way of North Carolina. So talk about that for a minute.
Well, in the years that I played, well, let's just start out today. I'd foul out in the first 2 minutes of a game, so I wouldn't be much of a player. The way the rules have changed, you know, it's a little bit softer, but no, growing up on Long Island was great. We had some terrific players come out of Long Island. We were talking before the broadcast about the great Mitch Kupchak, and yeah, he was just down the road. I mean, we were all within maybe a 15-mile radius of each other, and just fantastic players. Great rivalries back then. I mean, my high school, Babylon High School, won 2 Long Island championships, and the Vickers brothers went to Iona. My brother Chris played at Carolina, and North Babylon. All the players they had came out of there. Russell Pierre later on, and my good friend, I got a shout out to Derek Brower. We were brothers in arms. I mean, it was just it was hard playing against them, but when we played together in the old Empire State games, it was a heck of a lot of fun. And we lay claim to beating the indomitable New York City boys, which was I mean, everybody on that bench was a pro. So it was Derek, I think, had 42 points, and Long Island had 48. So so we had a lot of fun. It was great. And I was fortunate enough, my brother played at Carolina, and I was fortunate enough to be recruited. And as soon as they called, I said sure. But I was more kind of a New York guy, and I just didn't kind of set well with me down there. And I remember thinking, what am I going to do? First place I thought of was St. John's, but at the time, St. John's was ranked number 1. And that was the year, a great year, Chuck, when you guys, St. John's, I think at the time, had a winning streak. I forget how many, don't test the frontal lobe is too well, but yeah, I flew back a call, and he said, how fast can you get here? And before I knew it, I left the green lawns of Chapel Hill to the cement block of Queens. But I was happy because most of my family's from Queens, and I couldn't have made a better choice.
So Matt, but when you were also, many people don't know this, but you were also a all county football player. So I remember the days.
Well, how could you not know that the way I played basketball? I mean, come on.
That's my next question. I mean, we would do in our due diligence, because we are professional journalists now, Sonny and I.
That's right. We took a deep
do our
dive.
due diligence and look stuff up. Did you get offers to play football in college too? I think
I did. I made the decision as a 16-year-old. I was running cross country, and I'm 6'5", and just to be in shape for basketball. And
running cross country.
Oh. I had this crazy idea. Yeah. Oh, it was horrible. Running in Sunken Meadow Park in Long Island, guys know what that is. It's hills, and it's death. But I got this crazy idea that I wasn't tough enough, and I decided to go after football. Never played organized football, just touch football with the guys in the neighborhood, in the street, in the cars, and the cement. And, but I got this idea that I needed to be tougher, basketball wise. I mean, I was 6'5" and 175 pounds in high school. And so I just approached the football coach, and he said, sure, you're athletic, come on out. And I said, listen, the most I did was play touch football on the street. And he said, no problem. We'll find a spot for you. And before you know it, I mean, my goal, I just really fell in love with it because you could hit people and get away with it.
Legally.
I tried to do that in basketball, but it was, so I had a lot of fun with it. And my goal was to make all league. And at the end of the season, I went up to the head coach, and the late Tom DeNova, who was a longtime coach at Babylon High School. He said, well, you didn't make all league. He goes, but you made all America. And he goes, I got Lou Holtz on the phone. He goes, I got Howard Schnellenberger on the phone. And I got called from Howard when the University of Miami won the national championship on the field. If I can't convince you to play now. And I said, you cannot convince me to play college football. I mean, I mean, it was fair when I was 6'5" and guys I were going against were 5'5", but when guys were looking me in the eye and running full speed, I said, nah, this isn't for me. So, but my first love was always basketball. But you know, the football was it was fun. Played 2 years and really enjoyed it.
You could have played with the Rock, you know, down there at the U and Warren Sapp and all those guys. That would have been a fun thing, you know. Have all those guys down there.
Well, the life of a football player, I had read is really about 4 years if you're lucky, physically speaking.
Yeah.
And I just, I wanted to be able to walk when I finished. And you wouldn't know it the way I play basketball, but I can walk and I've got all my amenities and I'm good. Billy can attest to that. And, I'd be diving all over the floor and they're like, what the hell is this guy doing? No, football was really a lot of fun. And I almost did both at Carolina, but it would have been a little much. Yeah.
How about you, Bill? What was your path to go from Adlai Stevenson to St. John's? How'd that happen?
Well, so just taking it back a little bit before Adlai Stevenson, like
Right.
Matt, I also had a first love, which was baseball. I played
And
baseball.
so did Eddie. Yeah. He talks about
exactly,
it. Right?
just like Eddie. Yes, baseball in our part of the Bronx was a huge thing, and I played baseball for 3 years before I even thought about basketball. And it's funny, as a 12-year-old, my uncle was this big basketball guy, and I was like, man, I don't play basketball, I play baseball. So I would have say after Eddie's freshman year, I think I was 13 years old, and he was playing in this tournament called King Towers. Now, if you're from the 5 boroughs, you definitely know about this King Towers. Like, the phrase, if you know, you know. So, the whole neighborhood is going down to see Eddie playing King Towers in our neighborhood in the Bronx. So I said, I might as well just go. And I'm going down to Harlem with my baseball glove as a 13-year-old. I got my ball, I'm throwing it and taking the train downtown. And I get downtown to the game, and wow, what an atmosphere. King Towers, it was something I'd never seen before. And in this little game that everybody was going to watch, you had my uncle, of course, Eddie Pinckney. You had Walter Berry. You had Pearl Washington. You had Wendell Alexis. You had Jerry Reynolds, who played in the NBA from Brooklyn, great player. And a host of great guys. I mean, these guys were unbelievable. And I saw Pearl Washington play. And like my uncle, like I've seen him play 100 times. So I knew he was good and I loved him. And I saw Pearl Washington, I saw Walter Berry, and I saw all these guys, but Pearl Washington was the one who I saw. I looked at him, I couldn't believe what I was watching. This dude was like a wizard. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the park the next day and try that. So I went down to the park and I was trying to move like Pearl and everything. And I was like, well, this is fun. And that's what did it for me. And I told the great Pearl Washington that one day. I got to know Pearl pretty well. I was coaching AAU for a year, and Pearl Washington was my assistant. And we traveled the whole AAU circuit for 3 months, which was great. So I really got to know him. And I told him that story. And, Sonny, Pearl is a very humble person and kind of shy. He goes, Billy, get out of here, man. You didn't change sports because of me. I said, Pearl, I did. I wanted to do something like him, whatever it was. So that's how I got into basketball at the age of 13. And I went down to the Gauchos. Matt, I know you played for the Gauchos for a little bit as well. So not only we St. John's
I'm a little older than you.
Yeah, but not St. John, or not only St. John's brothers, but Gaucho brothers, just like Boo Harvey.
Yeah, Boo,
And,
right.
So started playing for the Gauchos AAU, which led me to go to Stevenson High School and play for Coach Post. And then that's kind of how we got rolling. Started doing pretty good in high school and making my name known on the AAU circuit and the high school circuit. And Coach Carnesecca, he found his way to my gym. Coach Carnesecca showed up one day. Ron Rutledge and Brian Mahoney, they came to my practice, and I was like, what are they doing here? Who are they here to see? And lo and behold, they were here to see me, and had a good conversation with them. And he's like, oh, wow, you do some good things out there, man. We pretty much like you. So they said they were going to keep an eye on me for a couple of weeks, played at St. John's in the playoffs. Next thing you know, I'm visiting the school. On my visit, I was hosted by a player who played a couple of years at St. John's named Elander Lewis, and also Jason Williams. They hosted me on the visit, and it was great. We had a fun time, and it was basically a no-brainer from there. It was just a really cool fit. God bless my mom. It made her really happy. It was only 7 to 8 miles from my house in the Bronx. Right. Mm-hmm. And Matt, you can attest to that, being pretty close to home.
There's a section for mothers at St.
Yes,
John's.
there you go. There you go.
They all complained because of they weren't regular seats. They were real bleachers. And, and I, for God's sakes, Mama, Chris is in North Carolina. My older brother, Jerry, played baseball in Florida. I said, you come to every game. Now you're going to complain? She goes, I'm going.
Yeah. So you guys,
but it was an awesome fit. It was an awesome fit with the coaches, awesome fit with the players. I grew up watching like Boo Harvey. I saw him play 3 years in high school as a junior high school kid. And I'm getting a chance to play with Boo Harvey, Shelton Jones, Matt Brust. I mean, I got a chance to play with these guys. So it was a really cool fit for me.
You guys both talk about Coach Carnesecca, so I do want to ask you a couple questions about him because he's just a national treasure, and I love the guy. And unfortunately, I never got to play for him, but I have a couple of relatives in Staten Island that know him very well and had him out for a few times. So just talk, Matt. First, give me some of your impressions and feelings about Coach Carnesecca.
Well, I consider Coach as a father. Anyone who follows me or knows me, that man single-handedly really saved me. And in as many ways as a person can be saved. After I had left North Carolina, I really felt as a young person, left Dean Smith and came back to my hometown and felt like I was just an outcast and didn't even want to see a basketball for a while. And he just took me in. And I remember it was my mom and myself and her just, please take care of my son. And he just said, don't worry, I'll take care of your boy. And I remember just sitting there. Lou Carnesecca is a fantastic communicator. I mean, there are guys who are great X's and O's coaches, and I've been fortunate to play for him. I played, again with Dean Smith, and after a little bit with Phil Jackson, and but Coach Carnesecca, I really consider to be one of the top 2 or 3 coaches, probably of all time, because in those days he had nothing to sell. I mean, St. John's, as Billy knows, I mean, it was a postage stamp in the middle of Queens. I mean, I went down to Chapel Hill, and you're an 18-year-old kid, and Chuck, you can attest to this. You go to Villanova, it's a beautiful school, the campus, and the guys take you out, and it's a good time. You go to Queens, and there are a few bullets whizzing by, and it was quite a different experience. But if it wasn't for Coach Carnesecca, Brian Mahoney, Ron Rutledge, I mean, those guys did it for 30, 40 years, and to do it in New York, I had the unique perspective of in Chapel Hill, for instance. The press corps was maybe 5 or 6 different outlets deep. And in New York, and Billy knows this, you'd go to the press room and after a game, and there's 20 to 30 different reporters, 5 different newspapers in New York, and it was not the college experience. It was New York, and as he would say, your ass is in Macy's window, and and I never quite knew what that meant. It took me 3 years to get to figure that. But he really knew how to get guys to perform, and he could really pick out talent. I mean, Billy, I can't say enough about him. And I've talked about Billy. We just recently had the unveiling of Coach's statue. Billy was like the later version of George Johnson, and George Johnson was a fabulous player, and I used to watch him as a boy. And Billy just he didn't have the hype, but man, he could really maneuver his body like a Wes Unseld. And coaches found guys, and he would never say no to guys that wanted to transfer. And he just put teams that were competitive. That was the beauty of St. John's and Carnesecca, because he made you believe that no matter who you played that night, we had a chance of winning. And boy, did we put some teams out there that, you'd scratch your head today. I mean, my good friend, and he'll tell me, but we called him Bruno, but Marco Baldi was our center. We had James Buchanan was a freshman. He weighed about 110 pounds. And, the late Malik was probably 120 pounds, but, talented. And of course, we had Jason and myself. And here we win the NIT. And Billy, of course. I cannot really, my affinity for Coach Carnesecca is beyond anything. And professionally, I think he did an outstanding job. I mean, these coaches today and back then could not match what Coach Carnesecca could achieve, because you have the campus, the crowd, people chanting your name, and you're 18 years old, you don't know any better. And Coach Carnesecca used to say, he'd say, "You know what, son?" He goes, "I have had my piece of cake. So you just shut up and you listen to me." And then, all 5'1" of them would be, he'd be under your chin, ready to knock you out in case you talk back to him. But he's the guy. And of all the men that I've encountered, he really taught me how to be a man. And my love and affinity for him and the coaching staff, I could never, I'm incredibly grateful. I could never repay what they gave to me.
Okay, thank you, man. I mean, everybody that's talked about Coach, that's why I said he's truly a national treasure, and I never had a chance to play for him. Billy, how about yourself? Talk a little bit about Coach, your relationships, and
Sure,
whatever you want to talk about.
I mean, Matt said a lot of the same things I'm going to say. I mean, but I will put it in this perspective. Coach Carnesecca, I would put him, he was a fabulous coach. However, he was the greatest humanitarian that I probably know. He was a total humanitarian, man, because, we would practice 3 hours, give or take a little bit.
Or
right. There was no rules back then, Bill.
Yeah, flex time. A little flex time.
But he realized that there were 20 other hours in the day, and he treated you like a young man, and he never infringed upon your young manhood. He was always trying to build you up, and make you the best human being you could be. He'd always talk to you about a bunch of different subjects. He would always just talk to me about these different things. I go, let's talk about some ball. He was like, we got time for that. But he was a very, very good mentor, teacher. But I just look at him as a great human being. And I think Matt touched on it, playing for great coaches, my travels overseas, playing for some fantastic coaches. great defensive coaches, great offensive coaches. However, Coach Carnesecca, like Matt said, was a great communicator. And I think the key to his success, he never, what I call OC, he never overcoached, especially in the games.
Yeah.
Like he got after us in practice. He really made us really sharp, and, we were hardworking and tough, and, we went through it in practice. He loved to practice, don't get me wrong. However, in the games, he said very little. He said very little to you in the games. He'd call a play, but he would say to us, this is your stage, He would always compare games to a concert pianist. He goes, concert pianist only has 2 gigs a year. So they got 362 days to practice. He said, but on that night, they better get it right.
Yeah.
So that's, I look at him as a great humanitarian, great teacher, fabulous coach, but a better person and a better humanitarian.
Now being a Paisano, I got to ask you, what was your favorite meal with Coach? What was your favorite breaking bread with Coach? Billy.
Matt, you want to go?
Oh, you want to go, Matt? All right, Matt, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, Billy knows, he knows right where I'm going. Coach had a friend. I don't know what the relation is or was, but his name was Carmine Dante. And it was a little Italian restaurant down the street. And Carmine and his sister and sister-in-law ran it for forever. And we had pregame meals. I don't think today they would feed players what we ate. Heavy pasta, acidic stuff. I mean, you had to get through the first 3 minutes of the first half to kind of let your stomach settle, even 3 hours before. But I'll never forget my redshirt year. When Walter came to St. John's, it was a big deal, of course, and Walter was just a fabulous college player. Walter decided that, and this is to Billy's point about the coaches not overcoaching, that they didn't over anything. If the players who played and did well, they did what they wanted. So Walter came in and he would order mozzarella and carrozza. And that's what Carmine would say. And Walter would say, yeah, the cheese. And they would come out with 4 blocks of cheese, roasted, and that's what Walter ate pregame. And I just looked at it,
and then come out and drop 36, Matt, on us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean,
and Walter, I mean, he just unbelievable stuff, but like Billy said, hey, he goes, listen to me. I remember complaining about it. I said, how come we can't get some of that? He goes, listen, when you can put it in like him, we'll get you whatever you want. So just run your business.
That was good, Matt. That was good.
Well, he spoke. Listen, they call Walter the truth, and Coach spoke the truth there, Matt. It's funny because I think him and Coach Massimino were famous friends. They've been to Italy several times together, and you're bringing back memories for me too, because you're telling all these Italian stories, and that was 100% what Mass was like too. Billy, what are your recollections, Bill?
Well, as Matt said, we ate at Dante's my whole time there, and the food was amazing. The people were amazing at Dante's, and Coach, it was like his safe haven. Right before the game, he always sat in the same chair. He sat in a spot where he could see everybody. We'd come in, he'd give you the once over like he always did, and we sit down and have a really cool meal before the games. But it was, it was always 2 or 3 different things that you had to choose from, and he would always, someone like myself would like to eat a lot. He would always give me that eye and go, we're not going to the chair, are we?
Yeah.
So,
I got
he was great, man. Dante's was a wonderful place, and You know, we'd always have a good time. You know, it was a time for us to just be together before the game, laugh, joke, and you know, kind of ease the tension before big games.
How about some of his expressions? Because we had Ronnie Stewart with Billy Goodwin on, and they were talking about, you know, one day a peacock, the next day a feather duster. That was one of them. But there was a bunch of. Did he have any kind of crazy expressions that you remember, Bill?
He had a million of them.
A million of them. Yeah, right. Exactly. I knew what I was asking.
You know, like if, say, Jason Williams or Malik was our big scorer, and they started maybe passing the ball a little bit too much, he go, "Hey, what the bleep are you, Santa Claus? What are you doing?" He said, "Put that ball in a hole." He had a million of them. He had a freaking million of them. And his thing was timing. He would always say it right on time. It was just, you know, it was a timing thing with him. And, you know, a lot of times us as like 19, 20-year-olds, we would say some of the craziest things ever. And he'd just give you a look like, and then he'd come back with something really quick. And you go, "Oh, okay. I got you, coach. I got you." But yeah, he had a million of them. You know, I remember one thing he'd always say, trying to take home the chandeliers if you were shooting the ball a bit too much. You know, again, he was a great one-liner, great one-liners.
How about
and
you,
still going strong too at 97 now.
Still going strong.
You know, I know you saw him, Matt, for the statue unveiling,
Yes.
right?
Yes, and he is right there. He's with it. He's you know, that he's got the great Italian genes, as we say. I think he's dropped a few pounds, but you know, when I saw him, I said, you know, I hugged him and you know, and he's got a troop of people around him, you know, and he looks at me, he goes, "Holy yes." He goes, "You know what? They got me with 13 doctors. Can you believe it? They think I'm going to live forever."
Great.
And he like Billy said, he had a million of them. I remember talking to him about my experience at Chapel Hill, and I remember Roy Williams, who turned out to be a really very, very good coach, would always, if anyone cursed, you know, blow the whistle and you're on the end line, and I could cost you a technical. And I was carrying on, and I just saw his face just kind of like contort. And he said, "I don't know what all that's about." He said, "But let me tell you something. I was walking down, now I don't know who these people are. You know, I figured it out 10 years later." So he said, I was walking down 34th Street with Frank and Willis, and we saw Dino. And I said, I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, Dino, how the hell are you?" And he goes, "You know," and he looked at me and he crossed his eyes at me and walked away. And and he goes, "Frank," he goes, "What's wrong with him?" And he goes, "You know, it's just the way you talk. It's you know, that's the way we talk here. He's not used to it." Well, he got a call. We got a call at St. John's from the SID from North Carolina. And Coach Smith was so rattled by that. And it was hard to rattle Coach Smith. And he said, "Please tell Coach Dino to refer to Coach Smith as Coach Smith." So, you know, Coach Carnesecca looked, he goes, "You know what I have to say to that?" He goes, "I'm going to tell you something, son." He goes, "Never trust a guy who doesn't curse." I mean, he went on. I mean, even through when we had finished, I remember one of our bench coaches, LoBalbo, and another Italian, Sicilian, according to, you know, Coach Carnesecca, which
there's a difference.
Yeah, there was a difference. You didn't want to piss him off, or else you were on the death list. And Al was at West Point. Now, Al coached Bob Knight and Mike Krzyzewski. So
Yep.
people don't may not know that, and taught them defense. And Al was always Lou could not stand Al up by the coaches because Al was just constantly out of his chair, screaming. Al had years before had throat cancer, and Al would talk like this, and he would be every curse word out of his mouth and throwing his arms up when someone went back door on us and screamed. So he had to move him down the end of the bench. So, and I said, Coach, how come, and he goes, what are you, a mind reader? You just play the game. He goes, he belongs down there. I just want him there. So poor Al passes away. And this is after, Billy and I, of course, were through school, and I call immediately to the university, and I get Coach on the line. And Al was, lest I say this with a lot of love and affection, he was a real greaseball. Al would wear like blue suits, like light blue suits.
Yep.
White shoes.
Leisure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and Al had a very unique hairdo, as Billy would say. He kind of, the swirl.
It's the swirl.
So Al passed, and I called Coach, and I had my whole thing to say to him. I really feel really horribly about this, and what are the arrangements, and what are we going to do, and I hope you're okay. And he gets really, really quiet, and it's just typical Coach. And he says, whispers in the phone, goes, "Hey, listen, just as long as they don't bury him in those alligator shoes." And I said, "Are you out of your mind?" I mean, and he goes, "Those things were terrible. I had to put up with that for 30 years." So, he always had a great sense of humor, a million one-liners. And, and to Billy's point about humanitarian, I wanted to touch on that. Coach saw everybody as the same, and Coach gave it to everybody from guys like, Chris Mullen down to, walk-ons. And, he was really special that way. And guys who've coached, those of us who have really, it's a psychological job, especially with better players, and, keeping them happy, and God, I wouldn't even want to coach today, but, he would let guys know, how he felt, didn't hold back, and nobody escaped it. But he just again, and I'm kind of going off track here. He just was a wonderful, wonderful guy that way. And
hey, Matt,
really,
I wanted to sorry to interrupt. I wanted to pick up on LoBalbo. Coach LoBalbo was Coach Carnesecca's. When the guys are getting on my nerves, give them to Coach LoBalbo. And Coach LoBalbo would take us for a good half an hour and teach us or put us through some real hard defensive things for a half an hour and say, look, you got, and Coach Carnesecca would move off to the side, cool off a little bit, and and he'd get back into it. But Coach LoBalbo was the guy. When Coach Carnesecca would get upset or whatever the case is, LoBalbo would step in. Hold up, I got a drill for you. And put us through some things on the defensive end. And real quick story about LoBalbo. My sophomore year is my first year playing, and I'm playing a little bit, and I start playing a little bit more at the end of the season. And so I'm sitting down with Coach LoBalbo at the end of the bench, and he goes, he's always talking defense. He's like, right, Bill? And I'm like holding conversations with him. Yeah, when I get, I'm going to play this type of defense. Yeah. He said, you better make sure. So the following year, my junior year, I'm playing a lot more, starting sometimes, coming off the bench. And he goes, hey, Sing, you're a little bit too rich to sit down here with me nowadays. He said, you're a rich guy now, huh? Okay. He said, but you better still play that defense I want. So LoBalbo was awesome, man. What a legend. He touched so many people's lives, as Matt said, even before our time at St. John's. He was a true legend. I mean, you go to New Jersey, and wow, the reception he gets and the respect he gets. And I'm sure it's probably all over the country, but New Jersey, he's true legend.
My high school coach was a disciple of LoBalbo, so we had all that stuff. So I got to ask you guys, because speaking of legends, you guys both had the pleasure of playing with the late great Malik Sealy. Billy, talk a little bit about Malik.
Well, Malik was, first of all, an awesome guy. He and I were roommates. His first year, my second year.
Mm-hmm.
He'd give you a shirt off his back. What an awesome, humble individual.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, fantastic play, and that goes without saying, but just an awesome, awesome individual, like super humble, genuinely nice guy, will do anything he can for you, comes from a beautiful family. I'm still very close with his family to this day, his brothers and his mom. What an awesome, awesome group of people. And, I get a little bit emotional when I talk about him because I was very close to him. But just a wonderful, wonderful human being. And, great player, very consistent as a player. Always showed up. Never was somebody to disappear in the game. And, always had nice things to say about other people. And just a fantastic talent, fantastic
Mm-hmm.
human being. And he's thoroughly missed.
Mm-hmm. Matt, how about yourself? What are some of the things that you did with Malik, and what do you remember? What are some of your memories?
Well, Malik came in as a freshman. It was my last year, and the coach had named me captain, along with Kevin Fitzpatrick, who was another senior on the team. And in comes this kid. I mean, honest to God, he looked like he was put together with toothpicks. I mean, just and like Billy said, he was just very quiet. And but man, could he play? And just was so smooth. And I remembered him playing and just being, like his humility came across on the court. And I remember there was a point in the season where Coach Carnesecca had turned to him and said, "Listen, you got to really turn this on, because you got a lot inside of you that, is dying to come out." And again, the beauty of Coach Carnesecca getting the best out of you, but he made Malik a believer. And Malik was, he definitely helped carry us through that season. It was a tough year. I mean, we started 3 freshmen. We ended up like, 14-9, and then we went on a run in the NIT, and he was a big factor in that. And I remember we played out at Ohio State, and he had a heck of a game. And, he just, it was really to watch him evolve and really, fight his way up and make it into the league and do what he did. And as Billy said, I obviously wasn't as close as Billy is, but anytime one of us, and these days, all of us are on the same team, no matter what school he went to, passes. When Pearl died, and Malik was just so tragic.
Yep.
It was just a flat out shock.
Yeah, it was horrible. Yeah.
But he was really, filled with humility, but could really play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. You talked about briefly Pearl's, wake and stuff. It was really hit me when I went to it, and I was friendly with Pearl, and I saw Coach Carnesecca at the casket, saying his prayers. And
Yep.
man, I saw this iconic player laying in this casket and this iconic coach, you know, they battled on the court and everything, and you see them in that kind of way. And that's when it really hit me, and how crazy the whole thing was.
I remember that exact moment, Chuck.
Man, it was
100%.
I still get chills from that. But so let's talk about this. You got two guys from New York here, one from the city, one from the island. I know playing in the world's most famous arena had to be a big deal for you guys both at Madison Square Garden. Talk about your best memories from playing at the Garden, because your home games were there for the bigger games. You know, we got to play in Alumni Hall, which is now Carnesecca Arena. We didn't do too good there. You know, my record against St. John's wasn't that good, Billy. You know that from talking to Ed, I'm sure. You know, I think we got 1 W in 4 years at St. John's. But anyway, talk about what that was like to play. And was that an allure for you to come there? Was that part of the, you know, were you enamored kind of with being at the Garden? How was that for you guys? And what are your best memories?
I'll go first. So yeah, I think the Garden was always a special place. It is a special place.
Yeah.
Again, me going back watching Big East basketball as a 13-year-old, because you know when Eddie was at Villanova, you know, anytime he came to the Garden, I was there. So I'm like 12, 13 years old, and I'm watching Chris Mullin, and I'm watching David Russell, and I'm watching Billy.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, I fell in love with the Big East. I fell in love with it, and Madison Square Garden was a big, big part of that. So yeah, the Garden was always a special place. You know, the battles with Georgetown, with Alonzo and Dikembe, the battles with those great, magnificent Orangemen team with Derek and Billy and Sherm, the UConn. I mean, it's endless. So the Big East and the Garden were synonymous, but playing our home games at the Garden was a true pleasure. You know, obviously your family and friends get to see you, and it's a place that I think every kid growing up, and especially in the city and you know surrounding areas, dreams about playing. When you get to play there 10, 12 times a year, and then you throw on top of that the Big East.
Yeah.
I think the Garden, you know, has a lot to say for itself, and I think we have to thank the great Dave Gavitt and also the great Patrick Ewing for bringing us all to the Garden.
That's right.
Got that right. Boy, you got that right in space. Yeah.
How about you, Matt? What are some of your best memories of playing at the Garden?
Well, you know, there's a reason they call it the world's most famous arena. And I have to say, you know, I have such an affinity, and it was such a privilege to play there. It was not the college experience. It was the real New York crowd. And there were so many lessons that I learned. I couldn't possibly list them, but going out in front of a real tough New York crowd, I really enjoyed it. And I was very fortunate, probably the way I played, and I was able to connect with the common man, so to speak, or common people. And you know, just the roar of people was it was a real genuine place that my God, you know, at the time, you have to remember that the Big East, of course, was the Big East, and the Knicks were just, well, the Knicks, and we were the show, and it didn't matter who we played at Madison Square Garden. We virtually sold out, and even with the teams, you know, we were always respectable, but you know, we were the show. And I just remember, you know, men bringing their sons in, and you know, just dressed in, you know, the fedoras and the overcoats, and you know, and they would be waiting out on 34th Street in the freezing cold, just for us to sign autographs. And you know, I mean, people, it was New York. I mean, I was from Long Island, but I identify with New York. I mean, what better place in the world is there? And Coach Carnesecca talked about that. He said, he said, one thing you'll get out of St. John's, he said, you're not going to, he goes, one thing, you're never going to take the campus with you. So that kind of just, I was over leaving Chapel Hill and other places that were beautiful campus. He said, but you're going to work and live here. And I can't tell you from my experience and just people who would come up to me, even to this day, people will say, I remember you, and you played really, hard, and people had a real affinity for St. John's, and Coach Carnesecca was New York, and not only was he New York, he was one of the first pioneers of really bringing foreign players over, and again, he brought Marco Baldi over, and could have got a guy a little more agile, but but Bruno was a great guy. But he really pioneered that. And to Billy's point, the Big East, it was Coach Carnesecca, and it was Dave Gavitt and Jack Kaiser, who was the longtime AD at St. John's, and they really got together in a room and basically thought this thing up. And and in those days, Chuck is right. We played Villanova, at Alumni Hall, and I think that was an Italian thing, going back and forth, like who could be more Italian, or who was, so they would like disrespect Coach Massimino, Coach, well, we're going to play you in Alumni Hall, we're not going to play you at Madison Square Garden. And and I have some great friends from Villanova, Mark Plansky, we did a Big East trip one year. Just a terrific guy, a great friend. But the Garden was just a super special place, and it just embodies New York so much so that I live in Connecticut now, but every time I leave the city, I get antsy. It's the center of it all. I mean, and who could ask for anything better? I mean, we were blessed and privileged to play and for such men that were really real men, and taught us how to be men. And we dealt with the media, it was, you didn't want to miss a foul shot at the end of the game. And then bottles would be coming at you, running through the jetway going out, so, that does happen there. Wouldn't be happening in other places, but it happened there.
Sure.
But Matt, let me just say one thing about, I'm sorry, I interrupt you, Matt, but playing in Madison Square Garden, I think St. John's, we were built on like blue collar workers, and I think, and I just wanted to touch on this before I forgot, Matt. Matt Brust was my captain my sophomore year, and it was amazing to see how the Garden received Matt and his style of play and his grit and his leadership, the way the Garden embraced him, because he was hardcore New York, pure. Even coming from Long Island, whatever the case is, he was what New York was about. He was about grit. He's about toughness and hard work. And I think being in the Garden, I think they appreciated St. John's because of that. And Matt, especially, he totally embodied that. And I'll never forget, Matt, you don't know this story, but when you graduated, right, we won the NIT, and it was great. And I think we won it on like a Thursday night or something like that. Coach Carnesecca comes to me and Malik. He said, y'all two better have your bleepity bleep in the bleepity bleep gym at 4:00 on Monday afternoon. Y'all two. This was right after we won the NIT Championship. So right. we had a strength coach, well, part-time. This is how long ago it was. Part-time strength coach. His name was Rob. Forgot Rob's last name, but he was a great guy. Shout out to Rob if you're watching. He had me and Malik in that weight room on that Monday after class, and he said, "You guys are going to be the team leaders." He said, "Matt Brust, you see how he played? That's how I won both of you." And he walked out of the room, and he had us lifting weights all spring, all summer. So man, I just wanted to throw that in there before I forgot it, because
Billy, that's how kind of you to say. I will add to about the weight room thing. It was true in the 80s. You saw guys like Reggie Williams. I mean, what did he weigh? 160 pounds all wet. I mean, everyone was a stick, the short shorts. And I remember when I had transferred, I just enjoyed the weight room. So I started lifting weights. And I remember Coach Carnesecca, and this is for you, Sonny, you'll appreciate this. He comes running in the weight room, and Brian Mahoney's poking his head in and out, and he's like, what do you think you're doing? And I'm like, I got to do something. I'm this alpha guy, total junkie for anything that's adrenaline rush. So Coach Carnesecca comes in and goes, "What the F is wrong with you?" He goes, "What are you going to be, a GD wrestler?" He goes, "Get out of there." He goes, "I don't want to see you in there anymore." So to hear, we did have a strength coach, and I remember, him, and super nice guy, but like red lights and green lights, step on the floor, do this, do that. It was like ridiculous. I said, "I'm just going to go do bench presses." And, I can't throw it in the East River as it is. And that's not my job. My job is to be the defensive guy. So, it's funny, how the game changed, but it's like, what are you guys doing? Weights? What's wrong with you? It's going to screw up your shot, and then you look at Jason Williams, and my God, he was this skinny guy. True story. Jason and I are very, very good friends. Jason showed up as we're playing pickup in Alumni Hall, and there was another guy there Billy had mentioned earlier, Orlando Lewis, who didn't kind of make it through and transferred out, but they were kind of drawn at one of the guys. And crazy me, I get into a fight with Jason. Now, Jason is not Jason who you see now. Jason, he was thin, but Jason was strong, really, really strong. And I honestly, I just held on for dear. I grabbed him by the head and just held on for dear life. And boy, was I crucified by Coach Carnesecca. He said, "What the hell? The guy's going to transfer out. They hate you. What are you?" So we just, there's a million great stories about just the guys. What Billy touched on really at St. John's was there's always camaraderie amongst the troops. And, but with us, it was special because we were kind of looked at as sort of kind of like outcast guys, transfer guys, or guys that didn't really kind of go to the big schools. And that's where Coach was so brilliant. He made it more about, it wasn't a game. He goes, and Billy said it beautifully, he didn't overcoach. He said, "This is your backyard." And he would be in, and he'd call timeout. He wouldn't say a word. He'd say, "All right, just, if it was going against us, he goes, just stop this thing right now, because you're embarrassing the family." So you're embarrassing the family. You get that SOB. And we had a game against UCLA. We had a home and home my sophomore and junior year, and Reggie Miller was playing. And of course, I drew Reggie Miller. I didn't know who he was, and I didn't really care. So he comes over half court and takes a shot from the hash mark, and boom, timeout. And Carnesecca's looking at me, and like I swear, I don't know how that guy doesn't have false teeth. He's grinding his teeth. He's like, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" And so he looks at me and he goes, you need to take care of that." I said, "Okay." And this is when I learned what take care of it meant. So you got the ball in the corner, and I put him in the front row into the UCLA bench. So for the rest, Reggie still dropped 18, but that was a win for us, because he led the country in scoring by 40. Every time I ran at the guy, he's looking down at me like I'm gonna knock him out. And but Coach was just, he just you got to stop that. Just take care of it. And like Billy said, he wouldn't tell you, X's and O's or how to do. you know what to do. And, it was just a wonderful situation at St. John's.
Hey, Chuck, I wanted to just kind of talk about that season a little bit with Matt in terms of on our NIT run. So I'll never forget, we finished the season, I think we were like 15-15, I think it was. And Coach Carnesecca, this was his first time not making the tournament in forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was so upset with he had steam coming out of his head that night. He said, I want y'all at 5 o'clock. This was on Selection Sunday. And it's like 7 o'clock at night. So we're 2 hours before. Get on the court and I want you dressed. So we're dressed, waiting for him. We didn't go to the tournament. He comes running downstairs, and I'm telling you, he had fire coming out. And we practiced, I'm not going to say how long that night, but we went on a run. We played 2 home games, 2 great home games, Oklahoma State and someone else. And then we go on the road. And this was, I want to say, the turning point of that season. We go on the road to Ohio State. And we had played them in a Christmas tournament, I think, or once, earlier in the season. And they had a guard, the great Jay Burleson, who I think he was leading the nation in scoring.
Yep.
And this kid was he was 5'10", Matt, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's probably stretching it, but you're right.
Yeah, maybe 5'10", about 120 pounds. But this kid looked, and he didn't look like much, but he dropped 35-40 on everybody. And we took a 35-40 piece from him too. And I think they beat us early in the season. So we're like, man, we got to go out to Ohio State to play them again. Unfortunately, Jay Burleson had a career-ending injury. Very unfortunate. Something happened with his neck and his shoulders. And so he wasn't playing. But they still had a great team. So we go down there and we play them. And I believe it was an overtime game. If I'm correct me if I'm mistaken, man. It was an overtime game, and Jason fouls out of the game. So we had like 4 people foul out of the game, and we hung on to beat them by like 1 point. And we were like, I remember us saying, "Yo, we won those 2 games at home. We won this game at Ohio State, man. When we go home, we're winning this NIT tournament." And we took care of business kind of not easily, but I would say the games that we played prior were tougher than those 2 games that we played in the semis and the finals. And Matt, I'll never forget this, at the Ohio State game, Matt was having a tough game, but he wasn't scoring. But he was just like, yo, Matt was a fiery guy. And he'd always say, yo, I'm locking down everybody. And I forgot, I don't think Jimmy Jackson was there yet. They had another great scorer. Matt totally took him out of the game. And we go on to win in overtime. And Matt got the winning rebound. He was like, this is my ball. So it was a great experience. And, great time for us at St. John's as players. That was one of my most memorable and happy moments playing at St. John's, was that game and going on to win that tournament.
Well, I could tell from listening to you guys, man, how passionate you are about the program and about coach and about your experiences at St. John's, as we all are, from our different, especially if you played for a coach that ended, whose name ended in a vowel. It seems to be a little different, right, Sonny?
Different. Yeah.
So, but we're up against it. We got to have you guys back, because this was great. Thank you very, very much, Billy and Matt. It was fantastic having you. It's great to see old friends. I haven't seen you guys in a long time with COVID and everything going on. So really, really good to have you with us, and really appreciate you spending some time with us and chopping it up with Sonny and I.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Sonny and Chuck, keep doing your thing, man. This is a great broadcast. I think more people watch it than you realize.
Yeah.
And people really appreciate it. So you guys continue to do your thing. This is awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks. We appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
Chuck,
Appreciate you
it's really,
too.
you guys are doing a great job, and it really is fun to watch the show.
I'm glad you were a part of it, man. It was great to see
Yeah,
you.
I'm glad you guys were on.
Thanks ever so much for having us.
Take care,
You've been
guys.
listening to the Big East Rewind with Chuck Everson and Sonny Spera. The Big East Rewind was produced and directed by Nick Chicocoris and Daryl Gurney. Check us out on YouTube. Put Big East Rewind in the search bar, and all of our episodes will come up, which is over 50 now. So we've got a bunch on there for you to choose from. We ask you to subscribe, hit like, and share it with your friends. Thanks a lot for joining us, and have a great night.